we are still working out some technical issues here, but we will get started just as soon as possible. Thank you.
Oh no, I've been letting it set. It's been sitting for several minutes. But like when I do that, if you can see like, well no it's not. It was doing something before. Show broadcast feed? Yeah. Like there. There it is. It was show broadcast feed. Hey Julie. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry. I'm trying to.
I didn't, but I noticed it wasn't there. But okay, good. Okay, cool. All right, thanks so much, Julie.
Okay, Chairman.
Okay, I'm just doing a quick test for audio online. Could I get an indication that folks online can hear the audio? Great, thank you so much. Welcome, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the May 21st, 2024 Planning Commission and Design Commission joint meeting for the City of Portland. We do have a joint hearing tonight on the Montgomery Park Area Plan. Before we get to that, however, we do have a couple of items of business. And first up, I do want to do a round of introductions. I'm the chair, Mary Rain O'Mara, for the Planning Commission. I'm going to just ask that we go around the dais since we have a blended group tonight of Planning Commission and Design Commissioners. So let's start with commissioners here in person, and then we'll go ahead and ask those joining online to introduce themselves.
Wade Lang with the Planning Commission.
Steph Routh, Planning Commission.
Sam Rodriguez, Design Commission.
Michael Pantoul, Planning Commission.
Michael Alexander, Planning Commission.
Zeri Santner, Design Commission.
Joe Swank, Design Commission.
Great, thank you so much. Let's start with Commissioner Spivak online.
Eli Spivak, Planning Commission.
Hitesh Patel, Planning Commission.
Tina Boo, Design Commission.
Okay. Do we have one more commissioner?
Design Commissioner Brian. Then let him know that he's muted.
Brian, do you want to introduce yourself?
He's muted.
Okay, Brian, it looks like you're in mute. There we go.
Sorry. Brian McCarter, Chair, Design Commission.
Thank you so much, and welcome to all of the commissioners who have joined tonight. So moving on with our next item of business, let's see, we do have a consent agenda for the Planning Commission. So this is the consideration of minutes from our April 23rd, 2024. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Lang, second?
Second.
Commissioner Alexander. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, just checking online, and motion carries. Patricia, do we have a director's report tonight?
Good evening, commissioners. Good evening and welcome to our design commissioners. It's very nice to see you here and to have the opportunity to have this joint hearing. We have a long meeting ahead of us, I think, and so as far as the director's report, I will keep it very brief. I will just note a couple of things. One is that you may have heard that there was a competition to name the new single permit authority, and the name that has been assigned to that bureau is the Portland Permitting and Development. That's the name of this new entity. So just wanted to share that. The other quick announcement is the Recap 10 project that this commission heard and made a recommendation to council on will be at council on May 30th. Both of these commissions actually had presentations and or had a hearing on the Recap project. And so that is moving forward to council now, city council. So those are the quick updates, and I'll turn it back to you, Chair, unless there are any other questions.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Any items of interest generally from commissioners? Okay. Just checking online. I am not seeing any hands raised, so we will go ahead and proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is the Montgomery Park Area Plan. This is a public hearing, but before we start testimony from the public, staff will present an overview of the project and will share the roles each commission has in our respective reviews. Once we get to the hearing, individuals will each have 3 minutes to provide testimony. And do any commissioners have items of disclosure related to this agenda item? Commissioner Lane, go ahead.
Yeah, I do sit on the Portland Streetcar Board.
Thank you. Any additional items of disclosure?
I live in the neighborhood and walk around that area quite a bit.
Thank you.
So do I. I live in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Okay, we have staff ready to start our overview. Welcome. I have several listed here, so I'll go ahead and read off. Please correct me if there have been any changes. Ryan Singer, Brian Manning, Joan Fredrickson, Cassie Ballew from BPS, and then Mauricio Leclerc and Sean Canny from PBOT. Okay.
Chair O'Meara, I do want to provide a few opening remarks, if that's all right.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Just wanted to provide a high-level framing for this plan, and I will apologize in advance. I do believe the staff presentation is quite a bit more than 30 minutes. So I just want to put that on your radar. We did want to make sure to give a very thorough overview and also to go into the design aspects of the plan and the urban design character statement for the benefit of our design commissioners. But to start us out, I just wanted to provide some high-level kind of observations and sort of framing for this project. So first, wanted just to appreciate the fact that the proposed plan that will be presented to you this evening has been in development for nearly 5 years. So it has been going on for quite some time. This plan started out as a study that was a partnership between the city and Metro. Metro received a federal grant, a Federal Transit Administration transit-oriented development grant that was used to help fund the city and Metro to undertake this work, including conducting a study of a number of potential streetcar extension alignments and the future development opportunities along those alignments for both housing and jobs, both in the Northwest Portland area as well as in Northeast Portland with extensions to Hollywood. So you will hear more about that from staff. But the study did reveal that there was greater opportunity in the nearer term in the Northwest area, and that is the reason why this particular plan focuses on the Northwest area. Want to just make sure that the commissioners are mindful of the fact that this is a long-range plan, so this area is not expected to develop overnight or even within a 5 or necessarily 10-year timeframe, but really this is akin to many long-range plans that the city initiates. This plan is expected to be built out over 20 plus years. And the extension of the Portland streetcar to Montgomery Park has been on the books for a long time. It was identified in a 2009 streetcar system concept plan and was subsequently included in the comprehensive plan. So that's some important information that we wanted to make sure that the commissions have. This is, by comparison, a relatively small plan area for kind of a city-initiated area plan. The area is roughly 80 acres. It's also an area that has historically been, and in parts is still, an industrial area that has been in transition for some time. And I wanted to take a brief opportunity to provide some specifics on the industrial acreage affected by the proposed changes, because that is a central part of this plan and a topic of discussion that you will hear in the public testimony. So just for the record and to clarify, there are approximately just under 17 and a half acres of area being changed from an industrial comprehensive plan designation to a designation that allows more mixed-use development, including light industrial, commercial, office, and housing. Of the other areas that are proposed for comprehensive plan changes, which is approximately 33 acres, that area is changing from a comprehensive plan designation that already allows lighter industrial uses and office uses. That decision to move to a greater mix of uses in those particular areas was introduced with changes that were made as far back as 2003. And were reinforced by some changes that were made in the 2035 Comprehensive Plan update that was adopted in 2018. So, but just again, want to reinforce that this area was recognized, portions of it was recognized as a sort of transitional area between the neighborhood to the south and the industrial areas to the north. And it was recognized some time ago that office and other uses were appropriate for that area as a transitional area. From the early stages of this planning process was designed to apply a value capture strategy to this plan with the goal of capturing value generated by land use changes and transportation investments to produce equitable outcomes in future development, which you will hear more about during the presentation. Technical analysis conducted during this planning process determined that there was significant development potential for new housing and jobs in the northwest area and would require little public investment to generate that kind of development. And the primary public investment is in the transportation, the aim of which is to ensure that this new mixed-use area is served by transit and has multimodal transit options that will help the city meet its mobility and climate goals. Unlike many areas where significant transformation has happened in the city, change in this area would occur through private development. And so unlike other examples that people might be aware of, these developments would not involve public funding, and there's really no significant public land ownership in this area. With the adoption of this plan, if it were to be recommended to council, and the accompanying public benefit agreement, which you will hear more about, this area presents the opportunity to increase housing and jobs with little public investment and to create an area that can be served by transit with a relatively cost-effective transportation investment through the extension of the streetcar. It is use of city, local, unrestricted transportation funding will be minimized in this project to fund the streetcar. And this project will leverage significant federal funding for the construction of the streetcar extension and new roads on which the streetcar will run. Funding will also come from dedicated localized funding sources, such as one of the things that's being recommended is a local improvement district. The proposed approach to this plan presents creative use of implementation tools that we have at our disposal, using not just the zoning code to achieve public policy objectives, but also using a public benefit agreement in conjunction with zoning to go beyond what the zoning can do. I'm almost finished here. I apologize. So we want to thank the project working group and our many outreach partners who invested significant time in providing input to this plan. And there have been many staff present and past and present who have worked on this plan over the many years. And I just want to thank them, particularly the staff that are before you here today who have worked hard to bring this plan to this point. So I think that concludes some of my opening remarks. Just wanted to provide some of that high-level background for you as you hear the very in-depth presentation. So I will now turn it over back to you, Chair, if you want to introduce the staff, or we can go right to the staff presentation. And we're hoping to, just one final thing, we're hoping to have obviously the presentation, hold the public hearing, and then have an opportunity to hear from the commissioners about any questions that they might have so that we can bring information back to work sessions, to future work sessions. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Patricia. So handing it over to staff who are here to present. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves and welcome.
Hi, I'm Ryan Singer. I'm the Principal Planner for Long Range Planning and Urban Design at BPS. And with me are Barry Manning, Cassie Ballou, and Sean Canny. I want you to imagine one possible future in Montgomery Park area. Just picture yourself standing on the corner of Northwest Wilson and Northwest 26th Avenue. Children play in the park on the corner. Residents walk their dogs and wait for the streetcar. Employees walk from the streetcar stop and nearby residences to the workshops, offices, and studios in the area. Imagine the buzz of a coasting bicycle, the bell of the streetcar, and the clatter of footsteps. The vision I described is just one possible future for the Montgomery Park area. The plan is intended to make it possible to get from where we are today to this future. There are slides for this, but that's fine. Thank you, Barry. And tonight, Barry is going to talk to you about the background and context of the plan area. I'm going to discuss our objectives and approach. Cassie will discuss the urban design framework. Barry will cover the regulatory changes, and Sean will speak to the transportation elements. And that's just city staff talking. The public has more to say. I would ask that you keep in mind the possible vision that I described throughout the evening. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Barry to discuss the background and existing conditions.
Thanks, Ryan. Again, Barry Manning, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And I am going to cover some of the background. Patricia covered some of it. I'll give you a little bit more detail, and then we'll move through the presentation. So just a reminder for folks that we are considering the Montgomery Park Area Plan. It's composed of 5 volumes, and I know everybody's read every word in all of those 5 volumes. So it's a lengthy plan. There's a lot there to digest. But just to recap what's in there for folks that haven't read through it, that Volume 1 is the proposed plan, which includes the direction that we're proposing the area move towards, and includes some analysis, some background, as well as the proposed comprehensive plan map changes, zoning map changes, and other features that would help us move towards implementation of the plan. Volume 2 is the regulatory tools volume. It includes changes to the Portland zoning code, including a new plan district, which we're calling the Vaughan-Nicolai Plan District, relating to the geography that will help evoke some of the changes we expect to see here, and a design character statement, which Cassie's going to talk more about in a minute. Volume 3 is the transportation plan, which has the complementary transportation investments and changes that we expect to see in the area to bring it to fruition, and Sean will talk more about that in a minute. Volume 4 is amendments to 2 existing area plans in the area, the Giles Lake Industrial Sanctuary Plan and the Northwest District Plan, both of which overlap on the Montgomery Park plan area that we're looking at tonight. So we're proposing amendments to those 2 area plans to reconcile them with the new plan that we're proposing. And then Volume 5 is the appendix, which includes a lot of background reports, mostly focused on the northwest portion of the Montgomery Park to Hollywood study that Patricia discussed, but also includes a draft of the public benefits agreement term sheet. So with that, I'll just describe, go back to some of the background of the Montgomery Park to Hollywood study, just to refresh and elaborate on what we're seeing. The Montgomery Park to Hollywood started in 2019, as Patricia said, to study two broad geographies to look at opportunity for new housing, jobs, and economic development along transit corridors. It was a collaboration between Bureau of Planning and Sustainability and PBOT, and funded by the Federal Transit Administration via Metro and a grant that they administered and helped us with. The Northeast study area looked at three alignments that you see on the right-hand side of the screen on Broadway Weidler, on Sandy Boulevard in blue, and on Irving and Sandy Boulevard shown in purple and blue. And those were preliminary assessments of opportunities in those areas. That work concluded a couple of years ago and is not planned to advance at this point in time, but it does set the table for future more in-depth study. The west side received the greatest amount of effort and study as part of the MP2H work. That's shown on the left-hand side of this map, and really was a higher level of planning and analysis in recognition of the more near-term opportunities that that area presented. This slide just shows the preliminary area that we started looking at in Northwest, an aerial photo showing in the white dashed area the preliminary study area, which was a quarter-mile buffer of a initially explored streetcar alignment or transit alignment shown in yellow, and that alignment headed north on 18th and 19th Avenue north of Highway 30 and into the industrial area north of Highway 30, and then out York Street, and then in a loop on 26th back on Wilson Street and connected back into the existing transit system. As the project evolved, that study area shrunk pretty dramatically and really is now focused on the area within that red dashed line, which is the area of the Montgomery Park area plan that we're talking about tonight. The Montgomery Park to Hollywood study included a lot of high-level planning goals that centered around growth and resilience, expansion of housing and job opportunities, and urban form. I want to mention that an important aspect of the work was to engage underserved communities to advance equitable outcomes and engage those communities in doing so. We'll hear a little bit more about that as I tell you about the public involvement. The plan is responsive and did consider a number of policy priorities and is guided by those policy considerations. They include the ones listed here on the page, but really center on, investments in centers and coordinated land use and transportation investments, the need for industrial and employment lands in the city to support and provide middle-wage jobs, particularly those that don't require a four-year degree, the need for more housing, including affordable housing in high-opportunity locations, and again, an emphasis on equitable development outcomes and how to realize public benefits through the value created by public actions. So why plan for this Northwest study area? As I mentioned, there were some opportunities. This the Montgomery Park to Hollywood process emphasized work in Northwest because of the opportunity and potential presented by the large and, at this time, somewhat underutilized sites located in this high opportunity area near both the central city and the industrial jobs of Northwest Portland. The Montgomery Park site, pictured at the top here, could accommodate additional housing and other kinds of commercial uses on its site, despite the fact that it has a couple of large structures, including the historic Montgomery Park building and historic American Can building in the foreground. The former ESCO site, pictured in the bottom photograph, is currently vacant, formerly the home of ESCO Steel. The city's comprehensive plan calls for mixed employment on this site. As Patricia noted, the site is currently zoned heavy industrial. As an opportunity, the study sought to answer, the question, what should the future land use be in this area to maximize that opportunity? I mentioned community engagement earlier, just a slide that details some of the community engagement that we undertook as part of the Montgomery Park to Hollywood study and then the subsequent Montgomery Park area plan. I won't read through all of this, but I will note that Montgomery Park to Hollywood study initially funded by the FTA grant, funded 4 community-based organizations listed at the top of this list to do outreach to their respective communities and engage them in topics about transit and growth management and opportunities in those areas. In Northwest, the organizations that we worked with were Friendly House, that is a community-based organization in the area that serves multiple users, and the Northwest Industrial Business Association, who partnered with the Columbia Corridor Association, and they represent industrial and employment-oriented businesses in the area. They were both funded to do outreach to their respective communities in the Northwest area. We also worked with, on the east side, Hollywood Senior Center and Urban League that partnered, as well as Micro Enterprise Solutions of Oregon, or MISO as they go by, and they again engaged their respective communities in the northeast area around Hollywood. I would note that all 4 of those organizations had seats on a project working group that Patricia mentioned earlier and participated in the study and the work that we're seeing tonight in Northwest via the working group. We also engaged with many other neighborhood and other groups, including the Northwest District Association, Northwest Active Streets, the Northwest Industrial Business Association I mentioned the Northwest Project Working Group that met 7 times during the course of the project. Later in the process, we also engaged with the York Street Work Group, a group of Portlanders that are interested in commemoration of York and his contributions to the Lewis and Clark expedition and significance in this area. That group was sponsored by Portland Harbor Community Coalition, and we can provide more information about their contributions. They also provided information on public benefits and what they thought were appropriate public benefits via a York Urban Village concept you may hear about later on. We also worked with large property owners. A key milestone in our community engagement, I'll mention, it was the release of the Northwest Plan discussion draft in late 2021, but largely in 2022, where we notified over 3,000 households of the project and made them aware of the plan, took public comments on that report, and public comments that we received on that report were influential in changes that resulted in this proposed plan you're hearing about tonight. And then finally, at the bottom of the slide here is just a list of some of the public meetings that we held during the Montgomery Park to Hollywood and Montgomery Park Area Plan project. And I'll just note that recent engagement included design character workshop in June 2023 and a BIPOC-focused design workshop in February 2024. So what did we hear from folks in terms of housing and development concerns? We've heard concerns broadly about housing affordability and the need to create a variety of affordable housing choices for communities, particularly as we invest in transit and make land use policy changes. We heard concerns about gentrification and displacement, both on the housing and commercial side. Since we're working in an area that's largely industrial and has a limited amount of housing in it, we've heard those concerns on the industrial side. In terms of jobs and industrial land, as Patricia mentioned earlier, we're working in an area that's largely zoned industrial or employment. And so we heard concerns about the loss of industrial land and implications for jobs and equity related to that. We also heard the desire to create quality jobs as we move forward with any plans. And we heard concerns and comments about the impacts to existing nearby industrial uses and its compatibility with mixed-use development and residential uses. In terms of community design and public benefits, we heard a desire for a higher level of urban design, planning, and framework here, more greening, a desire for parks and open spaces, and higher levels of climate resiliency with new development. We heard, as I mentioned earlier, a desire to commemorate York, for whom Northwest New York Street, which is a street in this district, is named as decreed by council in the early 2000s, and then an opportunity for more public and community benefits. And then finally, in terms of transportation system, and you'll hear more from Sean on this, we heard an interest in multimodal transportation connections and improved safety in the area, support for the streetcar project generally, and for improved transit opportunities, concerns about streetcar routing and designs, specifically in some options, and then also some concerns and feedback about impacts to parking, businesses, and traffic. As part of our early process, I just want to recap that we did explore alternate land use scenarios in this area, and they're shown here. At the top left is a industrial scenario, and what this did was explore the opportunity for industrial uses and transit in areas on both west of Highway 30 and Highway 30 is shown in that white area between the two areas in the north and east of Highway 30. So that was a scenario that maintained more of an industrial focus, did not introduce housing or high density employment. Scenario 2 explored higher density employment, expanded office uses, more intense development, but did not introduce significant amounts of housing into the area. Scenario 3 was a mixed use scenario that assumed a greater mix of housing, commercial services, and employment on both sides of Highway 30, both west of Highway 30 and east of Highway 30. And as a result of public feedback, which favored Scenario 1 and Scenario 3 more generally, and discussions with our project working group, internal review of our own policies, and additional analysis, staff eventually evolved to a Scenario 4 that has resulted in where we're going in the direction of the plan. And what it does is it is a hybrid between Scenario 1, the industrial scenario, and Scenario 3. It retains industrial uses east of Highway 30, in an area where the industrial uses are more built out and there is lower opportunity for change. And it proposes mixed use in the area west of Highway 30, shown kind of in the red and pink, where there is greater opportunity for change with the vacant ESCO site and the Montgomery Park site that has additional land capacity. And that's resulted in this plan concept scenario here. So what we're proposing is to create a new mixed-use neighborhood west of Highway 30, shown in red, but also circled in that red dashed line, served by an extension of Portland Streetcar. And you can see the streetcar extending up 23rd, out Roosevelt Street, onto 26th and back in loop on Wilson Street. We would propose to change the land use designations in this area from industrial and employment designations to facilitate a broader mix of uses, and we'll tell you more about what use designations we're proposing in a moment. This would create the potential for 2,000 or more new housing units with 200 or more affordable units, but we're also proposing regulations and incentives and terms that would foster jobs in the area on a continued basis. So this will be a true mixed-use area having both housing and job opportunities. Important to note in the concept is that we retained an employment buffer along Northwest Nikolai Street, shown in blue there, that would not allow housing and serve as a transition between the new mixed-use area shown in red and the existing industrial areas to the north of Nikolai, as well as the areas to the east. So with that, I'm going to walk you through some photographs of the plan area just to give you a flavor of the area. We conceptualize it in 5 different sub-areas, and I'll walk you through those really briefly. We'll hear more about those as we go. But without further ado, start with sub-area 1, which is the area between Northwest 23rd and 24th Avenues. It really is home to, it's a small lot and small block pattern, generally speaking. It contains a lot of older low-rise industrial and employment uses and about 8 single-family houses in the area, which you're seeing pictured there. Here are some of the employment uses that are located in that area. Sub-area 2, which we consider the transition between this new area and the neighborhood to the south, lies between Northwest Vaughn and Wilson Street. It is an area that includes some traditional lower density employment and industrial uses, as well as commercial uses. There's a restaurant, there's some auto services, as well as a hotel in that area. And this is the character of some of that area. Sub-area 3 is really the opportunity site, the former ESCO site, which is currently mostly vacant. It, again, is the former ESCO foundry, largely vacant. It offers great opportunities or great views of Mount Hood and the Fremont Bridge, depending on where you're standing. And you're seeing pictures of it here. Area 4 includes the historic resources, the Montgomery Park building and the American Can building. You see Montgomery Park in the background and the American Can building to the right. This sub-area also includes some verdant and treed areas to the north that occur on a slope that act as a transition to employment areas to the north in the buffer. And finally, the buffer area, sub-area 5, lies along Nikolai. It's shown in yellow on that map. It's in a mix of industrial and employment uses, typically large buildings, not a lot of windows, and are serving industrial and employment uses in that area. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. We'll talk a little bit more about the elements.
Thanks, Barry. So now that Barry has walked you through what is happening in the area today, here is an image of what we might expect to happen under the current regulations. Larger floor-plate industrial and employment uses in lower scale buildings. This type of development is fine, it's good. It meets some of our employment goals. However, under the proposed plan, we would expect to see taller, denser development with a mix of uses, including residential, office, and employment uses, with open space and active transportation infrastructure all served by a streetcar extension. Such development, we believe, would contribute to a wider array of comprehensive planning goals and policies. Before we jump into the objectives and there we go, and approaches, I want to discuss the racial equity analysis and equitable development report that were done as part of the planning for this area. I believe they're all in the appendix, right? Yep. The reports found that the Northwest Study Area, the area surrounding the Montgomery Park area plan, is a high opportunity area. That the relative risk of displacement in the area is lower than the city as a whole. That the reports recommended a value capture strategy to support equitable development, and also noted that the strong housing demand in the area means that development is more likely to occur, so we're more likely to meet our goals. The Montgomery Park area plan, this is a high opportunity area, as I said, with a plan to improve the transportation network and the extended transit. The land use objectives of the Montgomery Park area plan are to advance the city's housing goals, specifically regarding affordable housing, to advance the city's employment and access to opportunity goals, to create open space or park along with placemaking elements, and to advance the city's environmental goals, all while achieving quality design. So, we're not asking for too much. The approach consists of two toolboxes, a suite of regulatory tools, which are in the yellow, and a public benefits agreement in the blue. These tools are specifically designed to work together to achieve our equity and environmental goals. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about housing, but I also want to note these slides are not intended for you to read in great detail. They will be, I think, available to the commission so you can go back and look at them. But the objectives are there, and the table is intended to illustrate the way that the zoning code would work with the public benefits agreement. I want to remind the commissions that the citywide inclusionary housing program works with the market to provide income-restricted housing where it would not otherwise occur. It is a carefully calibrated program that is just one way to produce affordable income-restricted units. In Montgomery Park, the proposal would leverage this program to create upfront 200 units of affordable income-restricted housing. We want to deliver that benefit as soon as possible. The zoning code would complement the public benefits agreement by only allowing the higher floor area if 15% of the dwelling units are affordable. So to unlock a higher amount of bigger building, essentially, they'd have to provide more affordable units. Likewise, for jobs and employment uses, the zoning code would deploy a mix of requirements and incentives to ensure that the agreement's pledge of 800 middle wage jobs is achieved. The affordable commercial space would be both required and incentivized by the code and the public benefits agreement. There we go. Thanks, Barry. The provision of 40,000 square foot open space or park is an important goal for this plan. The zoning code will have an outdoor space requirement with an incentive to consolidate the open space on larger sites in the area. So it's a per unit requirement of open space that then if they pool that there's a benefit to that. The public benefits agreement will require an open space on the larger sites with the provisions for timing and location. So our opportunity sites would be the area where their open space would be expected to be located. For green features and quality design, the Montgomery Park area plan, I want to say, is transit-oriented development. It is TOD planning. The plan advances the comprehensive plan goals of a complete neighborhood through carbon neutral transportation mode. The proposed comprehensive plan and zoning code changes require and incentivize green building features and require high quality design through the design overlay and the associated regulations and tools. Our urban design studio at BPS has worked with PBOT to align the design elements with the transportation elements so as to ensure that the buildings and streets where they meet are making good places where people want to be. The regulatory tools, I'm just going to give you a little roadmap to what's ahead. To dive further into the details, Cassie Ballou from the Urban Design Studio will talk about the urban design framework and character statement. Barry Manning will come back to discuss the regulatory changes, and Sean Canny from PBOT will walk you through the details on the transportation. There you go. Cassie?
Thank you. I think my mic, is it on? Yes, okay. Thanks, Ryan. As you heard, the plan is home to a rich industrial and cultural history with a diverse mix of urban forms, block and lot patterns, building typologies and uses, as well as 2 prominent historic landmarks. The plan area's context is distinct enough that we've developed a series of sub-areas, as you heard from Barry, with concepts to build and support an urban design framework. This framework, illustrated in a land use growth concept diagram above, underscores how the plan's regulatory tools and policies will support the development of the entire district and address each area's unique context. These include highlighting a new active Main Street on Northwest Wilson, and the location of some of the area's unique vistas and future connections to Forest Park. Through this, the project plan hopes to shift the conversation and change the vision for this area. Next slide. This vision includes a few physical elements shown on this bird's eye view on screen, which illustrates a possible 20-year build-out of the planned district, including a redeveloped, active, and fully connected Northwest Wilson Street with access to newly created, publicly accessible open spaces and a new park, development utilizing climatic responsive designs such as eco-roofs and solar panels, the commemoration of York on Northwest York Street, reinforcement of the connection to Forest Park to create a new green curtain, replacing the former steel curtain, and the utilization of landscaping, setbacks, and careful building orientation to help offset potential impacts in this new mixed-use district. The plan also includes the expansion of the design overlay, as you heard Ryan mention, to ensure that the growth in the center aligns with the goals and policies set out in our 2035 comprehensive plan. As part of this expansion, the area will also receive a character statement to guide design reviews in developing the area as the community has envisioned. Next slide. So within the plan area, the character statement will apply to the sub-areas that have the design overlay, and that's indicated in the image in blue, in the blue shade. Of those sub-areas, 1, 2, and 3 will most heavily use the character statement for projects that go through design review. It will only apply to a small portion of sub-area 4 in areas outside the historic landmark boundaries, which are shown in pink. And although the statement will not apply to development within sub-area 5, the plan includes guidance to help mitigate impacts from this employment buffer, which still has some light industrial uses. And final recommendations on the application and location of the design overlay will be made as part of the larger plan recommendations by the Planning Commission to City Council. However, the Design Commission will also provide their recommendation on the application of the design overlay to the Planning Commission during this process. And we can go over more of that later. Next slide. The character statements are a new tool, and if adopted, this will be the third one in the city of Portland. It's a long-range tool and intended to guide the development and inform the character of a place over a period of many years. A few important things to highlight about this document are, first, that character statements apply in our centers and corridors, which have the design overlay zone. On screen is the urban design framework map from our comprehensive plan, which shows our centers and corridors in red and orange. The character statement is part of the citywide design guidelines, which apply outside the Central City Plan District. And these guidelines will apply to the new project area for development going through design review. These will mostly be larger development projects with mostly mixed-use development. The guidance within this document is not meant to be an exhaustive list of guidelines, but just offer a range of ways that development can address local contexts in order to meet these guidelines. It's important also to note that it cannot regulate building height, FAR, or use. The statements are developed in partnership with an area's local community through several points of outreach. For this one, that included the design workshop and open house in June of 2023 that Barry mentioned, a public survey in November of 2023, and a BIPOC design focus group in February of this year. And finally, the statements are adopted through a legislative process like this one, with a recommendation from the Portland Design Commission to City Council. Next slide. Each character statement is limited to 2 pages and provides a background, a diagrammatic map, and in addition to guidance around 3 themes: community, architecture, and urban design, and natural and scenic resources. Next slide. The outreach we did laid the foundation to help create this current draft. And the content you see in this map is intended to highlight important destinations, features, and historic contexts within the area. This includes noting the original location of the Vaughn Street Ballpark, highlighting the opportunity to preserve and utilize the rail tracks in sub-areas 1 and 3, and emphasizing the green curtain element along Northwest Vaughn. The statement covers a lot of ground, but much of the guidance is centered around 3 primary issues. 1, referencing, reusing, and preserving the area's industrial heritage. 2, acknowledging the contributions made by previously displaced communities of color, primarily Black, Chinese, and Indigenous communities. And 2, acknowledging and restoring, where possible, the area's natural environment and resources. Staff also looked for opportunities to strengthen guidance within the character statement through the plan's proposed regulations and policies. This includes additional support for maintaining a landscaped buffer and setbacks at the southern border of Sub-Area 5, enforcing an active Main Street on Northwest Wilson, and incentives for more public open spaces and a new park. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barry to talk more about the regulatory policies. Yeah, pieces.
Great, thanks, Cassie. I'm going to walk you through changes that we're proposing to the comprehensive plan maps and comprehensive plan, as well as the zoning maps and some of the zoning code highlights that we're using to implement the Montgomery Park area plan. So what you see pictured in front of you right now is the current comprehensive plan map, and the comprehensive plan, just as a reminder, denotes the long-range vision for development in the area. And currently that vision is a combination of central employment shown in the bright purple, shown with the EX designation. I wish I had a pointer. Boy, where did those go? But if I had a pointer, I'd be pointing at the EX area in dark purple. That's the Montgomery Park site. To the right of that is the lighter purple ME labeled area. That is the area Patricia referenced early on in this presentation that was designated in the 2035 comp plan as mixed employment. So the area where we're expected to see a change and transition from heavier industrial uses to offices and more intense uses. To the right of that, you see the small block pattern between 23rd and 24th Avenues that is currently zoned General Industrial 1. And the comprehensive plan changes that we're proposing are shown in the next map, which is this map. And what this does is it expands that central employment, bright purple EX designation across much of the site, including the American Can site, the former Esco Steel site, the area, portion of the area between Northwest 23rd and 24th and the area between Northwest Vaughn and Northwest Wilson Street. And this would facilitate housing development as well as employment development and commercial services to serve this new mixed-use employment district that we're proposing as part of the Montgomery Park Area Plan. It also, the comprehensive plan changes include areas up in the upper right, where you'll see in dash the light purple area, where we're proposing to apply the mixed employment comprehensive plan designation to areas that are currently zoned for general industrial uses. And those are in the corner near Nikolai and 23rd and 24th. As part of the comprehensive plan map changes, we're also proposing to expand the Northwest Town Center to include this area, which is going to be a higher density area and receive the design overlay. That is shown in the red dashed line, and it would complement the existing Northwest Town Center, which is shown below. We are proposing, as I mentioned earlier, to reconcile a couple of existing area plans. The Giles Lake Industrial Sanctuary Plan overlaps in this area, and we're proposing to amend the boundary of that plan to remove the Montgomery Park Plan area from the Giles Lake Industrial Sanctuary Plan area. We also are proposing some minor text amendments that are in Volume 4. Similarly, to the south is the Northwest District Plan, which also has a slight overlap with this area. We're proposing again to amend the Northwest District Plan maps and some minor text amendments to remove the Montgomery Park Area Plan area from the Northwest District Plan to reconcile them so that there's not confusion about which set of regulations or rules apply in these areas. We're proposing, this is the existing figure 6.1, which shows industrial and employment lands throughout the city, and the inset map shows the application of the designations in this particular area. It's a combination of prime industrial overlay areas and some employment overlays, and as part of the proposal, we are suggesting that to remove the prime industrial overlay and the employment overlay, although some of the areas may still qualify as employment areas that would belong on this map. I'm going to move to the zoning changes here, and this is the existing zoning map, which shows a discrepancy between the zoning and the comprehensive plan. So the zoning is determines what's allowed now, and the comprehensive plan determines what could be allowed in the future. The zoning for some of the sites in the plan area, shown in dark gray, remains heavy industrial with a prime industrial overlay. So you see that dark gray area. That comprises the area adjacent to Nikolai and a large portion of the former ESCO site. That's zoned heavy industrial. To the south of that, you see the Vaughn Wilson corridor. That is currently zoned for general employment, as is the American Can site. And the area to the east of that, the small lot area, is zoned for general industrial with a prime industrial overlay. And the proposed zoning here, again, would mirror what we're proposing in the comprehensive plan, which is to extend the central employment designation across much of that area, including the ESCO, a former ESCO site rather, the American Can site in the area between Vaughn and Wilson, and 23rd and 24th. And we would apply general employment zoning in that employment buffer area along Northwest Nikolai Street, which you see in the lighter purple and hatched areas. Along with the zoning map changes, we're proposing, as I mentioned earlier, a new plan district tool in the zoning code that would further regulate development in order to evoke transit-oriented development in this area and the intensity that Ryan showed you and Cassie showed you in some of those diagrams. This map from that plan district shows that it would the boundary of the plan district, and as well as the streetcar alignment that's being proposed in the area, as well as the main street on Northwest Wilson that Cassie mentioned that we're trying to evoke in this area. And some of the key features of this new plan district include bonuses for height and floor area, non-residential floor area or space requirements, active use areas on the main street, affordable commercial space, urban green features, and others. We can talk more in detail about those as we move forward. The plan district also includes, as we said, a bonus structure that's intended to evoke the affordable housing and employment goals of the district. I show you this table up here to indicate that we're assigning different floor area maximums and different bonus structures to each of those different sub areas because they're all starting from a different place and we have different intent for each of them. What's important to note is that overall, the maximum floor area with bonuses gets up to about 5-to-1 for most of the sub-districts except for sub-district B, which is the home of Montgomery Park, where there's some exceptions for transfers and some other special features. The floor area and height bonuses, again, are related to inclusionary housing, evoking additional affordable housing or a higher percentage of affordable units, and employment opportunity. I would note one more thing, and this is a detail we can talk about later, that in areas C and D, those floor area ratios are linked to the public benefits agreement fairly directly in the provision of early affordable housing units. We are proposing, similar to the plan amendments, some amendments to the plan districts. So we're proposing to remove this area from the Giles Lake Industrial Sanctuary Plan District. And similarly in Northwest, which has a plan district, we're proposing to apply streetcar-oriented development regulations along Northwest 23rd, where this new streetcar extension would occur. That complements the existing regulations that apply in the dashed area on Northrop and Lovejoy. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean to talk about transportation, and we can wrap up pretty soon.
Thank you, Barry. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Sean Canny. I'm a transportation planner at the Portland Bureau of Transportation. Also present this evening are Mauricio Leclerc, supervising planner of the area and project planning team at PBOT, and Dan Bauer, who is executive director of Portland Streetcar. The proposed draft of the Montgomery Park Area Transportation Plan, which is Volume 3 of the Montgomery Park Area Plan, includes recommendations for multimodal transportation projects centered around the proposed streetcar extension to Montgomery Park, as well as based on adopted plans, existing policy, public engagement, and analysis. It also recommends policy updates to the Transportation System Plan, or TSP, and overviews recommended implementation strategies. Next slide, please. In addition to the community engagement described earlier, PBOT conducted another round of community engagement, mostly during 2023, focused on the proposed streetcar extension. We worked to reintroduce the project and get input on the community's needs and priorities, as well as to gather additional feedback on other proposals in the plan. We focused much of our canvassing that's listed there at the bottom and intercept surveys near existing regulated affordable housing near streetcar in Northwest Portland, as well as at existing transit stops near the proposed alignment. Next slide, please. The recommendations in the plan are organized around connections. This map represents the transportation concept for the area, which considers multimodal connections at various scales. Next slide. More specifically, the plan includes project recommendations at 3 different scales. Those internal to the Montgomery Park area itself, those that stitch the area together with the rest of the Northwest District neighborhood, and those that facilitate movement to and from the broader citywide and regional transportation network. The centerpiece recommended project, which is referred to in the plan as the Big Move, is a proposed streetcar extension as it improves connections at all 3 of those above scales. Next slide. The proposed streetcar extension itself connects the existing streetcar system to Montgomery Park. It is planned to be 100% off-wire using proven hybrid battery technology, significantly reducing construction and ongoing maintenance costs and minimizing impacts in the project area. I'll also note that Portland Streetcar's original fleet of vehicles are about 25 years old and reaching their end of useful life, and procurement of up to 15 new off-wire capable streetcars is already planned due to this need. The project would also include new multimodal streets, including extensions of Northwest Roosevelt Street, Northwest Wilson Street, and Northwest 25th Avenue. In this map, those are the green rectangles, as well as complete rehabilitation of Northwest 23rd Avenue from Northwest Lovejoy to Northwest Vaughan, including stormwater, utility, and accessibility upgrades. And I'll note that the community has called for improvements to 23rd Avenue for years. And the extension is projected to support 3,000 or more new daily riders, half of whom are expected to be transit dependent. Next slide. To get more specific, the preferred transit alternative is a 0.65 one-way route mile extension of the existing Portland Streetcar North-South, or NS line, from its existing terminus at Northwest 23rd Avenue and Northwest Northrop Street, along Northwest 23rd Avenue to a parallel one-way couplet with westbound movement on Northwest Roosevelt Street and eastbound movement on Northwest Wilson Street. Station locations have also been identified, though they would be finalized as part of the planned upcoming formal project development process, which will include more community engagement. Next slide. Here is the proposed typical cross-section of Northwest 23rd Avenue. The streetcar would operate both northbound and southbound in shared general purpose travel lanes, and parking would be maintained on both sides of the street. Next slide. And these are the two proposed cross-sections for Northwest Roosevelt Street and Northwest Wilson Street, where the streetcar would operate in that one-way parallel couplet. Improvements would also include multimodal transportation options, including bike lanes placed opposite the streetcar tracks to avoid conflicts, and these changes would result in a net increase of on-street parking in the area. Next slide. During the planning process, we evaluated various transit mode alternatives for their feasibility and suitability for the final recommended land use changes for the area. Streetcar was ultimately chosen for several reasons, including being the highest capacity transit type and being the most sustainable and climate-friendly option. Next slide. We also explored various alignment options for the proposed extension. Through research, community engagement, and analysis, the final preferred transit alternative that I've described was developed and selected. Next slide. So why streetcar specifically? Streetcar has a proven track record of helping support equitable and sustainable development. Of all housing constructed since 2001 in Portland, 50% has been built within 1/4 mile of an existing streetcar line. That number is 40% for all regulated affordable housing. Streetcar also draws high ridership, and Portland Streetcar is the third largest transit system in the state. This extension of Montgomery Park also allows us to move forward previous adopted planning efforts, including, as Patricia mentioned, the 2009 Streetcar System Concept Plan and the Comprehensive Plan Project. Streetcar also offers those climate benefits as it runs on 100% renewable energy and can help us meet our mode shift and carbon emission reduction goals as the city grows. Additionally, streetcar riders are consistently more diverse and transit dependent than Portlanders as a whole, and riders use streetcar to get to important destinations like school, work, shopping, medical appointments, and social services. Next slide. Why here? As already mentioned, the area presents the potential for thousands of new housing units and hundreds of new jobs in an area served by permanent, sustainable mass transit. The proposed investments in this area can help us address our housing crisis and meet our climate goals, reducing development pressures and related infrastructure costs on Portland's edges, and helping ease pressures in other gentrifying areas of the city. Streetcar also supports dense, walkable, and rollable development connecting to critical destinations, as I've mentioned, and as I've said previously, half of the projected riders of this proposed extension are expected to rely on transit to get where they need to go. Additionally, the opportunity would allow us to leverage a federal transit investment to address the disrepair of Northwest 23rd Avenue, tapping into that funding source for a severe need that we otherwise do not have sufficient resources to address. We have and will continue to make robust investments elsewhere, especially in underserved areas. The map on this slide shows completed and funded projects in East Portland between 2012 and 2025, with hundreds of millions of dollars focused in that area. We're currently working on the largest capital investment in PBOT's history on 82nd Avenue, and we continue to and will continue to make safety improvements and improve multimodal connections in East Portland and other areas of high need. We're also working to minimize the use of city discretionary funding on this project by seeking dedicated localized funding sources and that federal grant funding to pay for as much of this project as possible, so we avoid using funding that could be used elsewhere in the city. Next slide. Current planning level estimates indicate a rough project cost of around $120 million today, inclusive of all streetcar elements, new streets and street elements, and that rehabilitation of Northwest 23rd Avenue. That estimate, as well as those potential funding sources, would be finalized during the future stage of project development, which is a necessary and required stage with the Federal Transit Administration that we must complete prior to applying for federal grant funding. Those funding sources would likely include a 50% federal share, as well as various local sources. I'll note too, as we move forward toward a funding strategy, that there would be opportunities for community and stakeholder input, especially around the formation and structure of a local improvement district. Next slide. We also want to provide some clarity as to where we're going with the streetcar extension. We're currently in this deliberation stage while we're here, of course, with the Montgomery Park area plan, and are planning to finalize the preferred transit alternative that I've described as the locally preferred alternative for consideration at City Council. We're also planning to seek entry into project development with the FDA contingent on the adoption of this plan, after which we'll finalize that funding strategy, complete environmental review, and refine design and engineering. Next slide. The plan also recommends updates to the TSP street classifications for all modes, as well as for street design in and near the Montgomery Park area. On this map, recommended bicycle classifications are overviewed as an example. We work to connect gaps in the multimodal transportation network, in this case ensuring that bicycle movement can be supported within the area itself, as well as to and from adjacent areas into, again, the broader citywide bicycle network. The plan includes these classification recommendations for pedestrian, transit, street design, traffic, freight, and emergency response classifications as well. Next slide. The plan also recommends the development and adoption of a master street plan for the Montgomery Park area as a part of the next TSP update. Recommendations seek to ensure future street connections as the area grows, while offering flexibility for phased development in the area over time. Next slide. The plan also overviews recommended implementation strategies, including using the Von Nicolai Plan District described earlier to regulate parking ratios and off-street parking, the development of a parking management strategy for the area, the development of transportation demand management programs, which would be triggered as development occurs in the area, and the exploration of various pilot projects to help reduce drive-alone trips as demand grows, as well as the pursuance of federal funding and dedicated local funding sources to help pay for the streetcar extension and related improvements. And that's all I've got.
Okay, we're almost there. Thanks, Sean. So tonight, thank you for your attention for a long presentation. We're going to wrap up here. What we are asking Planning Commission to consider tonight is to recommend to City Council adoption of the Montgomery Park Area Plan, including Volume 1, which includes the comprehensive plan map, amendments, as well as the zoning map and zoning code amendments. They're listed here. Volume 2, which includes the zoning code amendments, the new plan district, as well as the character statement, not the character statement, the new plan district, as well as some other zoning code amendments and cleanup items that are included in Volume 2. Volume 3, which Sean will talk about in just one moment, and Volume 4, which is to amend the maps and texts of the existing area plans, the Giles Lake Industrial Sanctuary Plan and the Northwest District Plan as described in Volume 4 to address the overlap areas with the Montgomery Park Area Plan. So that's the Planning Commission action recommendations. I'll give it to Sean to talk about Volume 3, and then we'll talk about Design Commission.
In regard to the transportation elements from Volume 3, the preferred transit alternative, again, that I described is planned to be finalized as the locally preferred alternative, or LPA, for the streetcar extension to Montgomery Park, to be considered for adoption by City Council by resolution. At this point, we plan to do so alongside or around the same time the Montgomery Park Area Plan is considered for adoption. Planning Commission may choose to advise City Council on the LPA's consistency with the comprehensive plan. I'll also note that this project is already included in the Transportation System Plan's project list, as well as the Regional Transportation Plan's constrained near-term project list. The TSP is required to be updated to be technically consistent with the Regional Transportation Plan as part of the next Transportation System Plan update. There's no action required as part of that, just for FYI. And then the recommended transportation system plan changes in Volume 3 will be folded into the next transportation system plan update as well. These recommendations include those street classification updates, the master street plan, and the project list. So while at this time staff are not seeking formal deliberation on those elements themselves overall, they will return to Planning Commission for formal deliberation as part of the next TSP update.
Thanks, Sean. And then finally, our last staff request is recommended Design Commission actions here. We're asking the Design Commission to recommend to Planning Commission application as proposed of the design overlay zone, which Cassie described, to the area zoned central employment in the plan. Central employment typically comes with a design overlay zone, so we're asking for Design Commission to formally acknowledge that and recommend that to the Planning Commission. And then we're also asking the Design Commission to recommend to Portland City Council adoption of the Montgomery Park Area Character Statement and related updates to the citywide design guidelines as shown in Volume 2 of the plan. So with that, I'll just mention the next steps in the process here are that we have work sessions with both Planning and Design Commission scheduled for separately on the dates shown here, 6/11 for Planning Commission and 6/6 for Design Commission. We have additional dates to work out details and come to conclusion on amendments based on your direction from testimony and your questions. And then the next steps in the process would be to get your recommendations and then forward them on to City Council later this year. So with that, we say thank you, and we're opening it up to your questions.
Chair Romero, I'm so sorry. This is Patricia Diefendorf for the record. Can I just make one additional statement that was supposed to be part of my opening remarks? Very important that I forgot. And that statement is to just say that while we talked quite a bit in this presentation about the public benefit agreement and the way in which the zoning code and the public benefits agreement are intended to work together, the public benefit agreement is not before the Planning Commission nor the Design Commission. So just to be very clear on that, the public benefit agreement is a tool that ultimately really is not a land use decision and requires City Council action. So we presented the information to you so that you can see the full picture of what could be the future outcomes in the area as a result of both tools working together. But I just wanted to be sure to make that announcement and make that clear. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But
Thank you, Patricia. That was a clarifying question I had, just so that that was clear regarding the public benefits agreement. Is there an anticipated timeline for that to go before City Council? Is it tracking along with our recommendation?
Absolutely. The two items would be separate items going to council, but they would go to council together on the same day is the intention, two separate items on the council agenda. And just a further point of note, obviously what we have in the packet right now is the terms that will have to be fleshed out into a full public benefit agreement with a lot more detail, and so that is something to come, and ultimately that is adopted by City Council as an ordinance, but it is effectively a contractual agreement between the city and the property owners, just to add that point.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for the presentation. It's really difficult to condense 5 years of work into 30 minutes and just really significant in terms of all of your efforts. So certainly appreciate that. Welcome any clarifying questions from commissioners before we advance to public testimony. But of course, we want to proceed to that and make room for the public testimony. So any brief questions, and then we'll have time later in the agenda for additional comments and of course another work session. Go ahead.
Regarding the affordable housing, the presentation talks about 10%, 2,000 of which 200 would be affordable housing, which is pretty similar to inclusionary housing, correct? Now, my question is, was there any discussion about increasing that percentage? What I recall is that South Waterfront or even Pearl District, the city set aside or demanded 30% affordable housing. Why are we so low in this area?
I'm going to take the first part of that, but then I'll turn it over to Patricia and Ryan to elaborate. The proposal is to have either earlier production of affordable housing units or a higher percentage of affordable housing units. The 10% at 60 is indeed the same number as an inclusionary housing target. The benefit that we would be achieving by that is that we would get those units early on in the process prior to the construction of market rate units. So we feel there's a benefit in that early production of those housing units. If those housing units are not produced in an earlier time frame, in order to achieve the higher FARs that this plan envisions, a higher percentage would be required, at least in most of the sub areas within this plan district. And that we've targeted at 15% at 60% of median family income. I can't speak to South Waterfront or the Pearl specifically, but I would remind the commission that we don't have the tools of urban renewal, or, I'm sorry, tax increment financing. In this district, this is basically a market-driven plan, and we're working with the parameters that we found in our analysis that the market could achieve by and large. So, Patricia, do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. Very briefly, Commissioners, and thank you very much for your question. Just to reiterate everything that Barry said, but just to emphasize the fact that in the examples that you're thinking of, and that was part of my opening remarks about, unlike other areas where we saw great transformation, where those areas they were in urban renewal districts. They had the benefit of tax increment financing, so public funding to achieve some of those projects and to help support those projects. Sometimes there was public land involved. There are many different arrangements, but that this situation is very distinct from those situations in the sense that they do not have that kind of the public funding and or public land being brought into the area for development. So that is an important distinction, and that was part of the distinction I was trying to describe in sort of the opening remarks.
Okay, thank you. I have one more, if I may. The public benefit agreement, would that, the formal approval of that would happen concurrent to the planning, the adoption?
For the record, Patricia Diefendorfer, yes. They're intended to go to council together. The plan and all these legislative land use changes and the public benefit agreement
Yes,
at
thank
the
you.
same time.
Any other clarifying questions before we move to public testimony? Go ahead, Vice Chair Pouncil.
This is Vice Chair Pouncil for the record. Yeah, I just wanted to, if I can clarify on that public, you said that the public benefit agreement, you said it's going to be with council at the same time. So is there, has community already kind of given feedback into that, or is there any, what's the, I'm just curious about the process that, community can be able to interject or be involved in
Sure.
that, so.
So the public benefit agreement is very much informed by the community input, and many of the elements of the public benefit agreement, as well as the zoning, address the issues that were identified as priorities through the public process. And they're also consistent with the city's priorities. So things like the provision of a public open space, a park, publicly accessible open space, the affordable housing, the middle wage jobs. The commemoration of York actually came directly from a community group, the York working group that you will probably hear from today. So the public input has been used to inform both the plan and the public benefit agreement. And as the public benefit agreement makes its way to council, there will be opportunities for the public to comment on the public benefit agreement at council as well.
Okay, thank you for those clarifications. I am not seeing any indication for our online commissioners that there are any clarifying questions at this time. So we will go ahead and proceed to public testimony. I will be calling the virtual attendees first because there are just a few of those, and then we'll go to our guests who are here in person tonight. So I'll call up in batches. Each testifier does have 3 minutes, and there will be an indication when you have 30 seconds left. We do have a few groups of individuals who have asked to testify together. Please, as groups, try to be succinct and keep to that 3 minutes per person or less if possible. So first up, we have Rania Salvant. After that is Stuart Tomlinson. And then after that, we will have the first group of public testimony, Sterling Stokes, Anjanette Brown, Cassie Cohen, Obie Hill. If you're here in person in that first group, feel free to come up to the presentation area in person, but we'll go ahead and start with our first virtual testifier. Do we have any of those folks ready for us? JP. The first is Rania Salvant, and then Stuart Tomlinson. Okay. Stuart Tomlinson. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Stuart Tomlinson. My wife Liza and I purchased our home in the 2300 block of Northwest Roosevelt Street in November 1988. That's 36 years. We are one of the 5 houses on the south side of the street that were built to the run-up of the 1905 Lewis and Clark Exposition. As with most of the 5 houses, ours was in dire need of repair and upgrades, which we continue to upgrade as a point of pride on our small but vibrant street. A common thread we hear from people who come onto the street is, wow, I never knew there were houses here. With the coming advent of the Montgomery Park area plan, myself and my neighbors are hoping that we are not forgotten in the process of building a new neighborhood based around the streetcar and another many thousand housing units that will bring in thousands of new residents to what is now about 20 residents, including the 2 homes on Northwest 23rd Avenue between Northwest Wilson and Roosevelt. As far as we know right now, we are the only permanent residents in the planned redevelopment and transit project. Many of us have already submitted testimony to the Planning Commission, but I'd like to briefly outline our questions and concerns. On Roosevelt Street between Northwest 23rd and 24th, almost 3/4 of the area is vacant, and we are assuming that's all going to be developed. We do worry that large modern buildings will dwarf and diminish our residences. How can the design process include our historic homes in a way that will be supportive and reflect their unique character? There is also the question of, will the 7 existing homeowners be held financially responsible along with developers and large property owners for improvement cost? We have asked that question on multiple occasions and we can't seem to get an answer. For example, shared cost transportation improvements mention Roosevelt Street in several documents stating property owners, developers will assist with the cost of sidewalk and sidewalk widening improvements. We have also noticed that the westbound streetcar alignment has seesawed between Roosevelt and York. Since there are plans to honor York, the enslaved Black man who was integral to the Lewis and Clark expedition, we're strongly hoping that maybe the streetcar would run there and make that commemoration of his contribution a destination, if you will. Over the years, the residents and homeowners have seen we've been the source of improvements on Northwest Roosevelt Street. We have been responsible for adding street trees twice along the street. The first planting of crab apples got sick and we replaced them with red maples. We also convinced the city to resurface all of the 2300 block of Northwest Roosevelt Street in August of 2018. Finally, I would like to echo this statement from John Plummer, our next door neighbor. We appreciate the transparency, the amount of work, and especially the community involvement that has gone into the preliminary Montgomery Park area plan drafts and planning. We look forward to getting these questions and concerns addressed and continue to participate in the process of the redevelopment.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Rania Salvant, just trying one more time, JP is first up on the list.
There's a phone number with no name. Rania Salvant?
Rania Salvant, if you are the phone number on here, the 850 number, please speak now.
Rania, hello, this is Sterling. Rania is the 850 phone number. She's been waiting.
Okay. I just, let's see.
Okay.
She's
Hello?
unmuted. Rania, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Rania Savant, and I apologize for that technical situation. But okay. So I appreciate everyone coming here tonight and working as hard as they have. I would like to say I'm not originally from Portland. My home state is Florida. And I grew up around city initiatives that rarely took the time to engage the community in feedback. And I appreciate the city of Portland and the commissioners for doing so. Oregon is my home now. I work for the state and I go to graduate school here in Portland. And so I will ask the commission to hear me on this. You know, as we get older, we begin to see life through the experienced eyes of an adult. And I'm asking us to use the insight and wisdom of our adult years bestowed upon us, but also to see through the eyes of a child. And what I mean by this is to imagine inclusive practices that go beyond listening and collecting feedback. The future should include opening ourselves up to suggestions and actions by those with lived experiences to aid in municipality practices. And so I'm asking that the City of Portland and the Commission continue to imagine new processes in which the community is actively engaged, but also recognize them through their hard work in an agreement that can establish trust, building opportunities for true civic stewardship, and giving respect to community ideas. Now, I do speak on behalf of the York Street Working Group in their commemoration of York, and I'm asking the city to reimagine how they bring community members and groups into the plans. Stewardship of ideas must be honored, and I really appreciate Barry's earlier acknowledgement of the group and the mention of our group in the May 9th memo for this meeting. However, the exclusion of the York Street Work Group in the April 2024 proposed plan and the inclusion of the Regional Arts and Culture Council can erase the hard work put in through research, planning, and implementation of these ideas by the group. Please allow for these community voices, including the York Street Work Group, to be heard and for those voices to be able to own those ideas that the city plans to use. The York Street Work Group has asked this of the city before, and we've had subsequent meetings, and we appreciate you for taking that time. However, I am asking the commission to participate in rewarding the effort of imagination, ingenuity, and ethical placemaking. Please work with the York Street Work Group and other organizations to be specific about what placemaking looks like. Go beyond memorializing with signage, monuments, or installations. The York Street Work Group examines more than commemoration. It looks at anti-displacement strategies and city processes, alternative housing and land ownership opportunities, and so much more. By bringing these community groups further into the fold, I believe that the voices can be represented accurately. Visibility will be present, and the vision of Portland's changes can encompass all voices. And I implore you to just please look at considering the York Working Group in the proposed plan and not just as maybe an addendum or footnote to all the work that has been done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up is Sterling Stokes, Anjanette Brown, Cassie Cohen, and Obie Hill. And again, my notes show that that's a group that's requested to testify together. So we have 2 of those members online, I believe, JP.
I believe that they'll have to
Take turns.
take turns.
Yeah. If you could all please just introduce yourselves. And I'm not sure if we have Cassie and Obie here in person. If so, please come on up. And why don't we get started with introductions with the 2 members of that group who are online?
I'm going to start. I'm going to unmute Sterling Stokes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no.
Hello, thank you. My name is Sterling Stokes. I use she, her pronouns, and I am supporting York Work Group today. I'd like to start off by saying York Work Group is a collective of individuals and organizations that have tirelessly worked for many years to honor and formally commemorate York. And Anjanette is going to go into a little bit more about how their involvement with the streetcar has taken shape over the past few years. But I would like to say that the York Work Group expressed community benefits that we hope to see with the streetcar expansion in March of 2023, which is now over a year ago. And in response, we received a letter from Patricia, who had stated that there were many components of our York Urban Village concept that aligns with the streetcar expansion and the hopes for that area, namely the York Street Cultural District, a variety of affordable housing choices, building intergenerational wealth through ownership, urban green and open space, quality jobs, industrial land offsets, anti-displacement strategies, environmental and climate resiliency, and transit and street transportation improvements. This letter closes by stating we welcome further input or feedback from the York Street Work Group regarding achieving public benefits alongside this planning process, which will guide the future redevelopment of this area. So now I'm referring to the Montgomery Park Area Draft Public Benefits Agreement Term Sheet, which was released last month. And the fifth proposed public benefit in this sheet states the commemoration of York through a public art and placemaking in a significant publicly accessible location within the development. As Rania stated, it further reads to refer to the Regional Arts and Culture Council as really leading this work. And then it further says the owner or developer may propose any other bona fide organization in place and must consult with representatives of interested community groups. So the decision to exclude mentioning York Work Group in this draft document, but include the RAC, erases the work of this group while simultaneously leaving the group's involvement at the hands of the owner and developer. Last July, the City of Portland, after a nearly 30-year relationship, decided to forego renewing its contract with RAC, effectively gutting its budget in totality. This entity will become the central contact to commemorate York, even though York Work Group has been working on this for years. Further, if RAC is to fulfill the fifth proposed public benefit solely and without others, this fifth proposed benefit cannot be considered a community benefit at all, as it was not made by or created directly through community members. So now we ask that the Planning and Design Commissioners require the Montgomery Park to Hollywood streetcar expansion to be halted until a community benefits tool has been negotiated and signed by community groups, that York Work Group is included and the York Urban Village concept in obtaining federal funds, and for direct support and incorporation of the York Work Group involvement and community needs into the Montgomery Park Area Draft Public Benefits Agreement Term Sheet. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And Jeanette Brown, I show as next. JP.
And Jeanette Brown, are you able to speak?
Hi, Anjanette. Please go ahead and say your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Anjanette. I'm here to support the York Work Group today. The York Street Work Group is a collective of individuals, organizations that are tirelessly working for many years to honor and formally commemorate York, an explorer in the corpse of discovery, often referred to as the Lewis and Clark Expedition. The Montgomery Park to Hollywood streetcar expansion crosses through York Street and was named after York through the advocacy and hard work of Ron Craig in 2002. Mr. Craig's contributions have yet to be mentioned in the MP2H documents. As momentum to honor York grew, members and organizations from the community began to join in efforts and advocacy, building York Group from the ground up. In 2022, Kimberly Moreland supported drafting the York Urban Village concept, detailing how to honor Black history in Portland through an intergenerational, multi-generational urban village and multi-generational urban village, a York Central District, and a variety of housing types, urban green and open space, urban green, sorry, my daughter, and open space, quality jobs, industrial land offsets, environmental and climate resiliency, anti-displacement strategy, and transit and street and transportation improvement. On March 28, 2023, York Group sent a memorandum to the city staff detailing community identified public benefits in context of NP to H streetcar expansion. The community benefits expressed through the Montgomery Park Area Plan Draft Public Benefits Agreement Term Sheet, April 2024, minimize and do not accurately reflect the depth and of community benefits expressed through the engagement process, especially by your group. The city is including the minimum community benefits that the government is legally required to adhere to, which is not enough given the historical harms and potential harms to come from this major redevelopment project, excluding the lived experiences, acts, desires of the community members, especially those of color, low income, and workers in the industrial zone who have been forced to endure the discriminatory and harmful land use change across Portland for centuries is blatant committal of social environmental injustice. We asked BPS leadership to expand negotiations to include all parties on the MP2H, at least 3 months to include at least 3 negotiation meetings, and we also asked increased transparency and intentional inclusivity throughout all MP2H process and inclusion of YWG in the city's drafting of federal transportation grant for MP2H. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, we have Cassie Cohen and Obi Hill, who are both here with us in person. Welcome. Go ahead and state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes each.
Greetings. My name is Cassie Cohen. I'll do my best. I am have a. Oh, is this not on? Oh.
There you go.
Okay. Greetings. My name is Cassie Cohen. I'm the Executive Director of Portland Harbor Community Coalition. We've been supporting York Work Group for quite some time now, well, since it formed. And I will, forgive me, I may go beyond 3 minutes due to my cough, my incessant asthmatic cough that won't go away. I will try my best. I just want to reiterate, we do appreciate, the city hearing us out over this last period of our engagement on this project. We showed up because of Mr. Obi's vision for York around York Street and got plugged into this process not knowing that it was happening. So we have demands due to, not being satisfied with just checking the box of community engagement and wanting to see meaningful participation in decision-making and kind of the final outcomes that we see. So I just want to reiterate, York Work Group asks that the Planning and Design Commissioners sort of not approve the Montgomery Park to Hollywood streetcar expansion until a community benefits tool has been negotiated and signed by community groups, including York Work Group. So that's a key distinction. The purpose of community benefits tools such as community benefits agreements or regional workforce equity agreements, or what could be this public benefits agreement as well, should be to prevent conventional development processes of perpetuating systemic racism by co-creating agreements between community groups, labor, developers, owners, and public agencies. These community benefits tools have succeeded across the nation in meeting and often exceeding workforce and contracting goals, as well as wealth generation for frontline communities and other social, environmental, community benefits, including affordable housing or even permanent affordable housing. So we ask again The acknowledgement of York Work Group's influence in formal MP2H documents and any components of the York Urban Village concept that were incorporated into these documents. And we ask for inclusion of our group, any other community groups, and labor in the developing of the community benefits tool. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Obie Hill, welcome. Please introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. There are 48,000.
And please turn on your mic, just right in front.
Oh.
There you go.
Yes, my name is Obie Hill. There are 48,000 minutes in a 24-hour day, and I'm going to take 3. I was a child in Vanport, the second largest city in the state of Oregon at that time. And Memorial Day of 1948, it was flooded. I was in the 1st grade. The transcripts were lost, so I had to repeat the 1st grade. But it put me a little bit ahead of my other people in the class. I would like to say that in a book I read about the names and origins of the historical origins of Portland, I found out that York Street in 1891 was changed from Y to York. But the author didn't know what York meant. He said the street was originally dedicated as Y in the Northwest Alphabet District. What should correspond to X has become Roosevelt, and I heard about Roosevelt tonight. And we don't know what the city officials in 1891 chose the name they had in mind, York. Many names of British origin in Portland, and they may have been thinking of the famous English city or county. The only person with the name listed in the city directory at that time was Milton York, who was a confectionery and fruit store. He owned it near Clay Street. But when I went to school, I learned who York was. Now, York was a member of actually he was owned by Clark of the Lewis and Clark expedition. And this time around, what we would like to see, and I know my 3 minutes is almost up. This time I would like to see ownership and recognition of York by people who look like York. We hear a lot of rigmarole, jiggle-malo, and all kind of jargon all the time. But this time, I think we need to make sure that there's ownership provisions as well as management services a part of this whole process. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. We don't typically do question as part of public testimony, but we will reserve time later. Yeah, after we get through all of the testimony. Thanks, Vice Chair Pouncil. Up next, we have Richard Grano Sajaski, and I'm probably not doing that right. Please correct me as you introduce yourself. And after that, I'll go ahead and call up now Brian Ames and Warren Rosenfeld. Welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the commissioners for holding this public meeting. Obviously, this development is very important for the development of the Northwest District. And my testimony is basically covering 4 items. As we heard earlier today, the original September 2019 streetcar extension plan called for one-way branches of the streetcar along 18th Street and 19th Street to Vaughan, which was supported by local neighborhood associations on those streets. The length of the two-way track that was proposed along Vaughan is much shorter than the proposed two-way traffic that's now being proposed along 23rd. The current plan is a two-way extension down 23rd Street, which, to my knowledge, is opposed by the majority of the actual community members on 23rd. There is serious concern that long-term construction along 23rd Avenue will reduce the ability of customers to park at businesses, reduce foot traffic, and harm businesses, at least in the short run, with no clear long-term benefit. I believe in the proposal that was made, there are actually no stops between Northrop Street, where I live, and Vaughan. So that 23rd Street extension isn't actually serving the businesses on 23rd Street. I would ask, why was this change made from 18th and 19th Street, where there was local support for the streetcar going down those routes? Why was the change made, and why not change it back in lieu of what I believe is strong neighborhood disapproval of extension of the streetcar down 23rd Avenue? Secondly, there's a proposal to increase tax revenue for payment of this streetcar extension by a local improvement district, which would include properties from 23rd and 24th Avenue. How can this be justified if the neighborhood feels it will not benefit from the project? Why not limit the LID to the newly developed area, which will benefit from the extended streetcar? Better yet, why not reinstitute the plan to put the streetcar down 18th and 19th Avenues, since a 2019 coalition of property owners apparently supported an LID in that area to finance the streetcar extension. My third point is that the Northwest District is deficient in open area parks and playgrounds, tennis courts, ballparks, swimming facilities, and other amenities present in most other districts. The creation of a city-supported community center with a swimming pool, tennis courts, and ballparks is sorely needed, and one should be put in the new neighborhood to serve that neighborhood and the entire Northwest District. The number of residents in the Northwest District grew by over 34% from 2010 to 2020, and that doesn't include the new buildings in the Conway development and other large residential buildings built in the last 4 years. Over 10% of the households in the Northwest District live below the poverty line, and they don't have access to private recreational facilities. It would be unfair to increase the number of residents even further without a significant investment in recreational facilities, which includes a local community center. I think that my 3 minutes is up.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, now going to Brian Ames and Warren Rosenfeld. And I'll go ahead and call up Mary Pivedo as following those two. Welcome. Please introduce yourselves for the record. And you each have 3 minutes.
Commissioners, I'm Warren Rosenfeld, and one of the partners in the ownership of the former ESCO foundry. My partners like to have me talk about the site's history because they think I was there in 1901, when C.F. Swigert and E.I. Fuller both had streetcar lines running to Vaughan Street, and decided to fund a new ballpark, hoping it would draw more people into the area. Initial stadium capacity was 3,000 and was expanded to 6,000 a few years later with the 1905 Lewis and Clark Exposition. Most people thought the Beavers would ultimately move to the newly constructed Multnomah Stadium in 1926, but the team stayed put, a showcase of the Pacific Coast League. Finally, in 1955, with the Vaughan Street Ballpark in rough shape, the team moved to Multnomah Stadium, and the club elected to auction the property, which my grandfather, uncle, and father purchased. Mr. Swigert's Electric Steel Company, ESCO, foundry was a neighbor to the ballpark. Our family's recycling business was also albeit across Northwest Nikolai Street, where we continue to operate some 77 years later. In the way trust can only be explained, the two gentlemen had agreed early on that whomever needed the property first for development would ultimately be the owner. At one of their regular coffees, most likely a 5:30 a.m. affair at the old Chase Bag Coffee House, Mr. Swigert shared that ESCO was ready to expand. And would my grandfather just tell him the price? My grandfather turned the request on its head and asked Mr. Swigert to write down a price. He did so, writing the number on a piece of paper and handing it across the table face down. They shook, and only then did my grandfather look at the number. That purchase and sale agreement covers barely a page and a half. We all know the rest. ESCO goes on to become an internationally acclaimed steel foundry, remaining headquartered in Portland, Oregon, continuing to operate the Vaughn Street Foundry until 2016, when the founding family sells the business, and we become, once again, owners of the site. A partnership of 5 local families that were the original developers of the Pearl District. And now it feels like we're coming full circle. Vaughn Street as an attractor. The Vaughn Street of today is no longer the steel curtain of 30 years ago. It no longer reflects that border between mixed uses to the south and the industrial sanctuary to the north, especially given the combination of Montgomery Park's entitlements and the unlikely replacement of ESCO foundry-type manufacturing jobs. But we can be true to the mission of being a generator of middle-wage job growth. Staff's proposal makes that metric clear and establishes a strong buffer along Northwest Nikolai for continued industrial use and activity to the north. That's a much better outcome than the middling employment generated by 800,000 square feet of potentially generic bulk warehousing. A purchase and sale agreement may no longer be just one page, but once again, this slice of Portland can help lead a renaissance in jobs, housing, historic recognition, and maybe even the return of a streetcar. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Ames. I'm a project manager at Walsh Construction. I'm also one of the property owners of the former ESCO site and have been working with the city over the past 5 years on this proposed rezoning. First off, I want to say that the group that Warren and I represent, including Al Solheim, who's here today, cares deeply about the city and its future. Since we purchased the property 6 years ago, Portland has gone through a great deal of change. However, we have remained patient and committed to the city in helping to achieve our collective goals of housing and jobs throughout this process. As you are aware, currently it is very difficult to plan for the future with so little certainty about things like the capital markets, where interest rates are headed, and the city's ability to attract investment. But if we do not plan ahead, we will not be ready when the tides turn back in our direction, which they will. That is why we have participated in this planning process, working initially with the city's project working group, and then digging in deeper with the Planning Bureau, PBOT, Portland Streetcar, the Parks Department, neighborhood groups, many other groups over the past 5 years. It is not easy to take on more obligations like an LID for a streetcar, additional inclusionary housing requirements, job production goals, or giving up an entire city block for a city park in times like these. But we are of the mindset that these additional obligations can be made feasible, deliverable, and actionable by the code changes before you that allow for moderate density increases and a wider breadth of uses that align with the city's primary objectives, housing and jobs. Time will tell, but this is a good start and one that we can support. This is not to say that this agreement is perfect. We would like more base density or reduced permit review timelines, to name a few examples. But we are here today in the spirit of working together to offer our endorsement of this plan moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mary Pivito.
Good evening. Mary Pivito, Co-Director of Neighbors for Clean Air. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify for this incredible vision for the neighborhood I've called home since 1991. Unwittingly, 15 years ago, I stumbled into the paradox that is Portland land use policy when one May morning in 2009, I stumbled on a news report that the air quality around my daughter's school, Chapman Elementary, was ranked among the worst in the nation due to its proximity to the heavy industry I could see from my Northwest Portland front porch. I soon learned this problem was caused in part by a city plan that designated the corridor abutting my neighborhood as an industrial sanctuary, for which there was no coordination with state environmental regulators about the safety and well-being of communities that would be situated next to that industry. When I discovered this juxtaposition, I would have done anything to see an alternative plan such as this before you today. But in the ensuing 15 years, I've come to learn a lot about the environmental injustices that persist across the region, and that equity has to be a citywide conversation. One such place is the East Portland neighborhood of Argay Terrace, an area that PSU researcher Dr. Vivek Chandez has said suffered the most severe heat island effects due to its lower than average tree canopy. Neighbors for Clean Air began over 2 years ago working with neighbors in the Park Rose School District to address concerns around a 13-acre industrial zoned lot across from the high school. Those students and families have hopes for something better than a warehouse in that place, a vision of their own mixed-use development, including a STEM center for students, community space, outdoor recreation fields, and housing. But instead of a hearing and an open invitation to present their vision like this Montgomery Park idea, they've been repeatedly told by officials of the city that their hands are tied by zoning decisions made a decade or more ago, that it's math. The city has to preserve a certain amount of land for industrial use, and the current proposed use represents good jobs, despite salaries associated with distribution centers being half of what a recent analysis of living expenses would require for a family living wage in Portland. So it's up to you. I ask you to ask the questions. Does this decision before you tonight mean that communities like Park Rose and Argay Terrace continue to endure the disproportionate burden of the region's economic activity? District 45 State Rep Thuy Tran noted this in a recent letter to the city asking it to reconsider the distribution center permit. Quote, "For decades, the Park Rose community has endured neglect and economic disparity. The proximity to other industrial developments and historically neglected urban infrastructure underscore the need for an urban development paradigm that prioritizes human life and health. As the Planning Commission, you should demand that no individual decision like this one is made until a robust and thorough discussion is had within the current economic opportunity analysis process. That is when you should be contemplating with the best available information and public input, what do we want Portland's future to be across the whole city? What is the best plan and safeguards we need for robust economic and housing growth that will ensure everyone across Portland can enjoy living and working in healthy, safe, and prosperous communities? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Jordan Lewis, Stephen Weber, Philip Sellinger. Welcome. Jordan Lewis is first. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes for your testimony.
Hello, my name is Jordan Lewis. I am here today to testify about the Portland streetcar expansion. I just have some concerns that the battery electric, the off-wire capabilities the technology is mature. And I know that's kind of not the purview of this meeting. It's more of a planning and sustainability thing. But I just think that I want to put on the record that operational reliability of the streetcar system is really important. And I don't want to jeopardize the overall system reliability in the name of lower operational costs. So that's all I really have to say. I just hope we keep reliability in mind when we're designing this, and that if the technology is mature, then I'll defer to Portland Streetcar. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Weber.
sorry, that light is a lot lighter than I realized. Good evening. My name is Stephen Weber, and while I have previously submitted testimony by mail as the chair of the Friends of Portland Streetcar, which I verified this morning is available in the MAP app, I wanted to additionally testify on the Montgomery Park area plan as an individual who resides in the South Waterfront neighborhood, and an individual who has lived in Portland for almost 10 years. I have seen considerable development along the streetcar alignment since moving to Portland, especially on the Central East Side. I have little doubt that streetcar is a key player in neighborhood development, but streetcar alone is not enough. I do believe streetcar will be an integral part of the Montgomery Park area plan, but it is one thing to put a plan on paper. It is another thing to put that plan in the ground. South Waterfront, as we know it today, arguably began to take shape in 2007, when the first high-rises and buildings from OHSU were completed and streetcar extended to what is now known as South Lowell and Bond, but planning for it can be traced back to the North Macadam Urban Renewal Plan of 1999. However, it was not until December of last year that the South Waterfront Greenway, a very well-used multi-use path and key neighborhood connector, was connected between South Lane Street and the old spaghetti factory. The Tillicum Crossing opened in September of 2015. It still does not have any connections of any kind at the southern end, making South Bond Avenue incomplete, in part because the Zidell Yards project failed to materialize as originally planned. We were supposed to finally have a grocery store in the district in 2026 as part of the Elmo Manhattan blocks. However, it was revealed that the expected retailer was going to be Safeway, and due to the pending merger between the Albertsons Company and the Kroger family of stores, that grocery store is now on indefinite hold. My point in all this is that South Waterfront is not a new district in Portland. It is an established one, yet an incomplete one. We lack what should be basic infrastructure for a thriving neighborhood. With the ESCO site, you have an opportunity for revitalization that we may never again see in Portland. With the Montgomery Park area plan, you have a fantastic plan for it on paper. This is exactly the kind of development that Portland needs right now. Please let the plan on paper become the plan that goes into the ground. Please don't let this become another South Waterfront. Please don't make this another half-realized plan. Please make Portland the city that works again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Philip Sellinger.
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Phil Sellinger, living at 2466 Northwest Thurman Street. I served on the Montgomery Park to Hollywood Project Working Group, but I'm here today to speak for Northwest Active Streets, a small group dedicated to the promotion of active transportation policies, plans, and projects for the Northwest quadrant of the City of Portland. We provided detailed comments to staff in November of 2021, which are part of your record. I would like to summarize our recently submitted written testimony. Above all, we believe it is important to invest in our town centers, putting jobs where people want to live and reducing auto dependence. This will optimize existing and new public and private infrastructure. We believe neighborhood streets are about much more than a place to park your car. The reconstruction of Northwest Wilson and Roosevelt as multimodal streets will be a welcoming environment for all. We support reduced or off-street parking for those streets. The extension of the streetcar extension will help knit the Northwest neighborhoods together, visibly, conveniently, and directly. We appreciate how the Montgomery Park area plan calls for a seamless extension of measures being implemented as part of Northwest in Motion. Our outstanding concern is the impact of regional traffic drawn to this new development on the fragile intersection of I-405 with Northwest 23rd and Vaughan. That concern includes consideration of new development that might lie outside the study area. That intersection also needs to be pedestrian friendly to provide convenient access to Line 24 transit over the Fremont Bridge. Our written testimony expands on these considerations and encourages your full support for the Montgomery Park Area Plan and its character statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Samuel Diaz and Aaron DeShaw. After their testimony, we have another group of 4, so I will wait and have you all come up, but that is Corky Collier, Greg Thiessen, Chris Crever, and Tanya Hartnett. Samuel Diaz, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, chairs. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Sam Diaz, Executive Director at 1000 Friends of Oregon. We're a statewide organization working with Oregonians on land conservation and development issues. It's always great to be back in Portland, and especially in front of the Planning Commission, where we have accomplished a lot on re-legalizing housing. But in the past couple of years, we've really focused on economic development. And so this has really perked our interest on the economic opportunities analysis and some of the connections. So I'll just say 2 things can be true. One is Barry and the project team are extremely talented, and this plan hits so many notes that 1000 Friends absolutely loves and organizes around, and we hear Oregonians in large support of. I wish we had Barrys all over the city. I wish we had project teams all over the city creating these mixed-use areas. And at the same time, there are citywide questions that as commissioners, you have to zoom out, right? Barry zoomed in on an area, but that has implications for the entire city. And you've heard some of those concerns about equity, particularly with East Portland, and what the consequences are if there are approved land use changes for the industrial lands. And that's really what I want to dive into today. And the testimony is, if you do approve the 30 acres for the rezoning of the industrial land, the city does have to figure out what the supply for that industrial land is as required by Goal 9. And that is really concerning for us of where does that go? Is that going to end up in East Portland? Is it going to end up in North Portland? How does the city grapple with that? Luckily, thank you BPS for having an EOA process currently underway where we're asking those big picture questions and really leaning into the insight and the foresight of what this diversified economy of the future can look like. So we respectfully request that the Planning Commission, the Design Commission, and city staff table this important plan, see and really lean into the EOA process and sequence these really strategically so that way we can have zoom in conversations after we have the zoom out conversations. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Aaron DeShaw.
Hello, my name is Aaron DeShaw. I'm a native Oregonian. I've lived in Portland since 1989. I am the property owner of and owner of DeShaw Holdings and Trail Guides. The companies own the following: 2350 Northwest York, and then 3 lots on Northwest 23rd and Roosevelt, mostly on the north side, but one also on the south side. Represents approximately 1/2 of Northwest Roosevelt between 23rd and 24th. And approximately 1/3 of the south side of Northwest York between 23rd and 24th. I'm also have been asked to speak on behalf of my neighbors on Northwest York, Nick Olson and Jim Fletcher, PVS Graphics, which own 2 lots, as well as Stefan Andren of Known Labs. Those 2 businesses own the entire north side of Northwest York. We've been in the neighborhood, PVS starting in the late 80s. I've owned since 2012. The plan provides the city of Portland a significant opportunity in terms of development. The families that co-own the former ESCO site that spoke earlier today has a strong reputation for development in this city. Myself and the other 2 owners on Northwest York all support the Montgomery Park plan.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Corky Collier, Greg Thiessen, Chris Crever, and Tanya Hartnett. And after this group, we have 2 more signed up to testify, just as a heads up. Those are Chris Smith and Todd Zarnitz. Welcome. Starting with Corky.
Yes, I'm Corky Collier, Executive Director of the Columbia Corridor Association. You see me here with residential neighborhood folks, with other industrial businesses. we're all here in agreement that this isn't ready to move forward. None of us expected to be here in opposition to this, honestly. Years ago, we thought we would work through some of the problems. I mean, every plan has its advantages and disadvantages. We had proposals that would make this better and minimize those disadvantages. Unfortunately, those were dropped, abandoned somewhere along the way, leaving an inherently flawed proposal. We currently have thriving makerspace in this planned district. We have industrial businesses that employ twice the percentage of BIPOC and LGBTQ employees compared to the city at large. And those disadvantaged employees have family wage jobs. They're creative businesses, homegrown companies, and residential neighborhood rich in culture. In other words, we have success right now. Celebrate it. This project's been described as a catalyst, but we feel the catalyst is already in place. The industrial sector has more family wage jobs for BIPOC and LGBTQ or people without 40-year degrees than any other sector. The mixed-use proposal, any way you slice it, is going to be a loss of those jobs. It gets a little bit worse. Also, according to BPS data, half of the business tenants coming into this area will be coming from other parts of the city, downtown, east side. So whatever advantage you have is half of what you're thinking. Since we're out of industrial land in Portland, reducing our current land supply will result in loss of those jobs. You may look around and see some vacant lots, but they're not. If they're industrial lots, they're in use. They may be a big parking area because a truck needs a big turning radius. In some cases, there are lots that are being held off the market, and it kind of makes sense. According to BPS, property owners in this area, the ESCO properties, for example, will see a 2 to 5 times increase in land value. Of course, they're holding that off the market for now. Yet still, when we talk to some of those property owners, some of them here, 55% of them in our survey said this plan was not good for equity in Portland. Can we make up for the problems of this plan? I think so. I think we can. NWDA wrote an excellent report with some really smart, detailed suggestions. But again, that was dropped off. On the industrial side, there's a windfall that can be used to rezone other land into industrial with no net loss of industrial land and no net loss of those jobs. It wouldn't be pretty, you'd have a big shift, but we could make do. It would be expensive too. Yeah, that's true. But the loss of jobs is expensive to those employees. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Greg Thiessen?
Hear me all right? Hey. So I'm Greg Tyson. I'm the chair of the Northwest District Association Planning Committee, and I'm here on behalf of the Northwest District Association testifying for the board. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, commissioners. And thank you to staff, especially Barry, Sean, and Dan Bauer, for the considerable amount of time they spent with us sharing their MPAP work. Our fundamental message to you this evening is that while we do not oppose the long envisioned extension of streetcar service to Montgomery Park, nor the redevelopment of the former ESCO site, we do oppose the proposals being brought forward in the current Montgomery Park Area Plan proposed draft. We oppose it for 3 fundamental reasons. The areas east of 24th and south of Wilson currently provide naturally occurring affordable commercial and incubator spaces, both city goals. The MPAP proposes to upzone this area, effectively eliminating their ability to continue to provide the workshop and maker spaces that are critical to Portland's economic future. We ask you to leave these areas alone and the existing zoning as is. Second, the MPAP area is not in the middle of the city. It is in essence a dead end from a transportation planning perspective. The MPAP proposes to create one-way and specialized streets that may be appropriate elsewhere but are not necessary or appropriate here. We suggest the city provide general purpose, typical streets that have the flexibility and versatility that is actually needed in the area, and not street sections that are solely based on streetcar operations preferences. Thirdly, much of the MPAP area is currently zoned for IH heavy industrial uses. The MPAP proposes to rezone the area to EX central employment uses. The upzoned land's value is up to 10 times greater than the existing value. There is no proportional concurrent public benefit being proposed. nor is there an identified hardship associated with the zone change. The project should provide dedicated public parks, adequate for ball and soccer fields, open space, and other elements of public infrastructure to justify the granting of this considerable private windfall. Finally, we understand our city-recognized association to the north, the Northwest Industrial Business Association, as well as the Working Waterfront Coalition and the Columbia Corridor Association, all have similar concerns regarding what is before you in the proposed draft. The NWDA's position of opposition to the current proposed draft is taken only after years of endeavoring to have these elements of the plan reconsidered, adjusted, and incorporated. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Chris Creever?
Thank you, Commissioners, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to us today. My name is Chris Creever. I am the president of the Northwest Industrial Business Association, and I too am speaking on behalf of my organization. And I do want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues here at the table, both Greg and Corky so far. While we have been working with Barry on this plan for quite some time, we still have some reservations about this plan as it stands moving forward today. And I'm going to take a little different tack on this approach because my position is going to come from a property owner and a business owner within the district. You see, I used to operate a business, Portland's largest soundstage production facility on 26th and Upshur, and that was in place there since 1994. In 2016, 17, 18, there was a series of zone changes going within that area that really made it difficult for me to do what I was doing in that area. I provide living wage jobs for many people, grips, gaffers, production assistants, directors. We drive grip trucks up and down the streets. And over the time from 1994 to 2017, that specific area went through a significant change where doing our jobs became harder and harder to do. Trucks would show up early in the morning, they would leave late at night, sometimes show up on the weekend. As the neighborhood changed and commercial buildings went away, residential development took over, and it became increasingly difficult to do what we were doing in that particular location. So as a result, I was one of those businesses that really was what I like to call rezoned displaced. On the other side of the equation, I was one of the very, very few people that was able to find a suitable facility just 5 blocks away on the corner of 31st and Nikolai. I basically imploded everything I had at my location because it was slated for redevelopment, and I ended up establishing a new position down at that location. As a result, we're able to stay in business, but it's important to recognize that we provide a service. We are a maker space. We do provide jobs for the community in our sector. And as the zoning changes take place within the industrial district, we start now, it's only a matter of time before zoning erosion continues down within this district. Did I hear my 30 seconds yet? 5 seconds. Well, then I will finish up. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Tanya Hartnett.
All right, my name is Tanya Hartnett, and I'm the Executive Director for the Working Waterfront Coalition, representing the harbor industrial businesses and the nearly 300 small businesses that they support or rely on. Thank you for the opportunity to comment this evening on the Montgomery Park Area Plan. We have submitted a letter voicing our concerns, and I would like to highlight a couple of additional points tonight. Within walking distance of many of Portland neighborhoods and a short drive to the rest are thousands of Portlanders employed in industries along the Willamette River that receive family wages, benefits, and retirement programs. These employees build some of the most unique infrastructure, like bike bridges, streetcars, electric trucks, and barges, as well as provide the largest in manufacturing and recycling of metal products in North America. The industrial businesses in the marine and airport districts have grown up over time with the certainty that the industrial sanctuary designation provides. They offer a variety of middle-income jobs, options that do not require an advanced degree, and have a progression to high-income earnings. They also provide on-the-job training, apprenticeships, support, and/or reach out directly to high school, community college, trade programs, and the local community at large to recruit employees. Because of this, industrial jobs stand out as an opportunity to improve income inequality in Portland. Over half of middle wage jobs for people without bachelor's degrees in the metropolitan area are industrial jobs, according to the City of Portland Economic Opportunities Analysis work. Each industrial business is not a solitary entity. This ecosystem of economic interdependency flows throughout the Portland metro area, where the smaller supporting businesses are located. Without these, hundreds of smaller businesses, many of the larger industrial businesses, could not be successful. The transportation plan for Montgomery Park Area Plan puts this relationship at risk. Most of these businesses depend on efficient freight movement by all modes, but largely by truck, for their operation and connection to the next link in the supply chain. The transportation element of MPA seeks to disrupt efficient transportation movement by reducing street operation and, in some cases, reducing connectivity. In my previous work with Columbia Sportswear Company, I fully appreciate the value of a transportation system that functions for businesses. Efficient freight movement directly impacts the cost of an item. For these reasons, I urge the Commission to direct the Bureau of Planning to rework the transportation plan to support freight movement to the industrial and commercial businesses in the area.
Thank you. Chris Smith and Todd Zarnitz. Welcome. Chris, go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Chris Smith, and I serve as Vice Chair of the Board of Portland Streetcar, Inc. I have been enthusiastically working on streetcar for more than 20 years, since it came to my neighborhood in Northwest Portland in the late 90s. That includes working on the 2009 System Concept Plan that was mentioned earlier. I do that not because I love trains or I'm a railhead. I do it because streetcar has done something very important for Portland, which is to help create dense, sustainable neighborhoods where people want to live and work. We have been especially effective at doing that in brownfields. So the former ESCO site is an incredible opportunity to use streetcar in its best form, and I hope you will take the opportunity tonight to advance this plan to council. I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking about something I didn't plan to talk about tonight. That's the economic opportunity analysis. The last time we did an EOA, I was sitting where you are. And as part of that, I cast one of the few votes in my 12-year Planning Commission career that I regret, which was to vote for the zoning in Argay Terrace in the hope that, well, one, to make the math in the EOA work, and with the hope that we would get light industrial jobs that would be accessible to people in East Portland. Instead, we got distribution facilities and a real environmental problem. I would encourage you to think about the next EOA process very carefully. We are not making any more land in Portland, so if we're going to fit 20 years of housing and 20 years of employment opportunities, we have to do so more intensely. We have mostly figured out how to make housing work more intensely. We haven't done that as well with industrial jobs, and I think we need to do that very carefully with more intense use of industrial lands to help make the balance work. I also hope that you will take the opportunity to look at this EOA as a climate-oriented EOA, because some of the difficult decisions we have to make to reduce greenhouse gases will have to come through the way we envision our employment and industrial opportunities. So I would send you off with that plea to please be very focused on this EOA and what it means for Portland. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Todd Zarnitz.
I have no idea how this works. Am I on? Okay, thank you. My name is Todd Zarnitz. I'm the president of the Northwest District Association. The NWDA has submitted its own testimony, and this testimony is mine personally. Do I in the neighborhood generally want to see post-industrial land rezoned to more productive space? Absolutely. However, the question that I continue to ask is, well, how does it benefit the neighborhood? The answer from the beginning has been the neighborhood gets an extension of the streetcar to Montgomery Park. My response and many of my neighbors' response has been, okay, well, I have no reason to go to Montgomery Park and I don't see one materializing in the future, but if the neighborhood gets a free extension of the streetcar, why not? And the rather surprising clarification is actually, well, the neighborhood will have to pay for it. The first of these two issues, the practical benefits of the streetcar, the destination of the streetcar extension is a dead end. No one needs or wants to go to Montgomery Park in its current form. And when Montgomery Park becomes a new enclave, which as stated earlier tonight could take decades, the value of the streetcar will be mostly to the property owners in that neighborhood. And if those interests want to pay for the streetcar extension, so be it. However, the funding of the streetcar, which cannot be separated from the design itself, involves a scheme to tax a significant part of the Northwest District adjacent to and extending several blocks beyond the trackage going up Northwest 23rd Avenue via a local improvement district, AKA property taxes. The current estimated capital cost of the streetcar extension is $120 million, of which LID assessments are generally 15% and could be much higher without any TIF financing in this instance. So the great public benefit of upzoning the Montgomery Park area apparently is a streetcar that only really benefits the Montgomery Park area and whose construction costs the Northwest District will have to pay for to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars in new property taxes. The construction project itself will tie up the neighborhood's most important street, Northwest 23rd Avenue, for years during construction, and then saddle our very busy and soon-to-be busier street with a ponderous streetcar, which will also drape itself across the chaotic Northwest 23rd and Vaughan intersection, which feeds an interstate highway. The streetcar as proposed is not a neighborhood benefit. It's a bill of goods. A slow, inefficient, expensive streetcar extension to nowhere, a large part of which the neighborhood has to pay for it itself, to somehow be the centerpiece of the design is ridiculous. Therefore, the design in its current form must be modified. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. That concludes the oral testimony for this item. We will now close the oral record. The written testimony will remain open until Tuesday, May 28th at 5 p.m. Thank you, everyone who provided oral testimony tonight and those of you who have provided written testimony to date. I'll now ask staff to please come back up and we will do final thoughts. We are running a little over agenda. I know this has been a lot, but a reminder that we will have work sessions for both commissions. So I would actually invite Vice Chair Pouncil. I think you had a clarifying question that maybe came up during public testimony. Did you want to go first on that?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if the person I wanted to. Oh, well, this is my question was basically what's the difference between a public benefit agreement and a community benefits agreement. I wasn't quite sure if I could get a clarification on the difference between the two.
Vice Chair Pouncil, I can try to answer that. They're different tools. They have some similarities. The public benefit agreement, as the city has conceptualized it thus far, is a more traditional, I would say, development agreement. That is an agreement between the city and property owners who are willing to enter into an agreement with the city. A public benefits agreement is a tool that is used to have agreement with community partners also being part of the agreement. So it's a different kind of tool. It's typically used, I would say, my experience with it is that it's typically used in situations where you have more of that public investment that we were talking about and the distinction that we were making earlier. When you have public money in a project or you have public land in a project, typically accompanying situations where you would have, for example, an urban renewal district. So that's more typical situation. These are tools that I think, my limited knowledge and being relatively new in the city, I don't believe we've used a community benefits agreement in the city before. And my experience with it has been in very limited instances in the past. I might be wrong about that. Maybe I could ask staff who have, if staff have any knowledge specifically about that.
Just to answer, I'm not familiar with any community benefits agreements that have been done in conjunction with a zoning or an area plan specifically, but there may be other ones that have been developed through Prosper Portland.
The Broadway Corridor had a community development agreement.
Again, my understanding that was more of a Prosper Portland driven development plan.
And I'll just say, just for the record, that that is a situation as I was describing where there's public land ownership, there's public investment in a project, and it's in an urban renewal district.
Again, Mike Alexander, it's not unprecedented. I mean, we've not always been successful, but it certainly has been a tool that's been activated, particularly through Prosper.
Mary Reno-Merritt for the record. I was curious if there was any additional information that would touch on some of the concerns we've heard about the residential contribution to the plan. Is that referencing the LID, or what would be sort of the elaboration on why there's concerns? And could you speak a little bit more about that component, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. Again, Sean Canny for the record. I believe what the concern is around the structure of a local improvement district and who would be included and what that would look like and what the number would look like as well. That is something that we would finalize during the project development phase of the project, as I mentioned before. So what that looks like and its full structure, who would be included, as well as what assessment methodologies would be used and what that number would look like, would go through its own formal public process. We just haven't gotten there yet, and we will get there, and definitely are looking forward to having the conversation when we are able to.
Mike Alexander, for the record, I'm curious as to whether the changing relationship between RAC and the city has any bearing on who takes the lead in community engagement as it relates to working with the local community groups, but particularly specifically with the York Street Group. I mean, given the length of time that this may take and the hourglass is running through the contract with the city, who drives that work going forward?
I'll take a stab, and we may need to, come back in the work session with more information. If you notice in the public benefit term sheet, it talks about RAC or its successor, and that's in recognition of the fact that the status of RAC is in flux. I think I heard through the public comments the interest in the community, the York Avenue Work Group in particular, being interested in the process of determining what it looks like to commemorate York in this area. And that is, I think, an intention of this process. And it's actually in the term sheet, it also speaks to consultation with community. And we can certainly continue to work through that idea. The term sheet is just a term sheet right now. And as I mentioned, the public benefit agreement is going to be fleshed out more fully as an agreement. This was just kind of trying to capture some of the highlights of what the intention is. So I think there's room for ongoing conversation about that.
All right, thank you very much. And I think one of the opportunities is whether or not there is a successor or there is a collective body that's identified to drive that. And I think that's yet to be determined, but obviously it's going to have a significant impact. Thank you.
I see Commissioner Spivak, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. On the value capture piece of it, I may not have focused well enough, but the Echo Northwest analysis seems to contemplate multiple scenarios, and I'm not sure which of those scenarios is the one that's in front of us now. Or maybe it's none of the above and it's a tweak on it. So I'd be interested in seeing how that analysis, in terms of what value is added through this proposal and what we expect that this draft community public benefit agreement would, how much of the value is being used towards public benefit. I'd be interested in understanding better And I also, it's a little bit unclear to me, it seems like the draft PBA is with 3 property owners, but there's other property owners in the district. So I was trying to figure, I can't get my head quite around that. Does that mean the park would have to be in one of those 3 properties? Would the other property owners have would they be intertwined in their obligation to provide affordable housing? Would they be getting lots of value also, but no capture for them? So I just don't understand that piece of it. And then the other question, and I'm not expecting an answer right now, this is just sort of like for discussion later. The other is the questions about the economic opportunity analysis and timing with this project. I think that was an interesting question of like, what's the sequencing? But it also raised the question is when the EOA will be coming to us. If Chris was on the commission when he got to vote on it, I'm not sure I was yet. But most of the time I've been waiting to get a chance to vote on it and to contemplate it. So if it's far out still, I don't see it on our draft calendar yet, then it may be something that would be a long wait before that's done, even though I agree with the testimony that it makes sense to sort that out before making commitments to flip industrial land to other uses. Thanks.
Commissioner Spivak, I would say that it's probably best if we, I appreciate your framing on that, and it's probably best if we take that up in the work session and bring back additional information.
Commissioner Routh, go ahead.
Thank you. One just time-based that is not a comment, and one, thank you very much, staff. I totally agree with Sam Diaz. I wish there were many berries. This has been a wonderful plan. There are 25 minutes left for you. If there is anyone who has your ballot still in your pocket, the nearest place is Pioneer Courthouse Square. And I expect you to leave right now. Anyone? Okay, has everyone voted? Can I get a?
All right.
Great, okay, thank you very much. Okay, for the next thing. So I should have started with this with items of interest because Mary Rain, Chair O'Meara asked me to. I have the privilege of serving on the Economic Opportunity Analysis Collaborative Working Group. Our next meeting is June 28th, and actually one of my comments was similarly like, how does this impact and if as we're looking at what the next 20 years of buildable lands need to look like, how is this impacting what industrial lands we need to have within the city to go forward? So I appreciate a number of folks bringing that up. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Routh, the request was for the next meeting, so you still have time to give us that formal update. And we'll look forward to that at our next May 28th is our next Planning Commission meeting. Want to acknowledge we do have Design Commission here as well, so just make space if any of our design commissioners have final comment or quick question. Please go ahead.
Zeri Santner, we were tasked with 2 items. One, to recommend whether an overlay, design overlay, should be imposed on this, and we wholeheartedly agree. So whatever you do with the plan, if there are mixed-use development, we, I think, like to suggest, and we would formally do that, but we will like to suggest that you pursue that and you allow for that. We will have work sessions. I have quite a few questions related to the design issues. One item that I think, Madam Chair, you brought was to what degree the specificity of like York Street, you know, the character of the York Street. Some of these, or community character, or the urban design character, they're written in general terms, and we need to flesh it out so that the future design commissioners can really know what they're working with and can apply it. At least in my view, I just want to tell staff you have done a great job, but I would hope that there would be more specific information regarding the characters, urban design characters, and also especially York Street, so that we could really be faithful to them.
I've got a couple of comments. This is Sam Rodriguez, Design Commission also. Agree with my fellow chair, fellow commissioner. Design review overlay should be imposed over this new zoning, but I also would like to make a couple points, and maybe I'm straddling between Design Review Commission and you guys Planning Commission, but having served in several other commissions, I want to make sure that we all understand that it's important to get this off the ground, like someone else said, one of the testifiers, and then in order to do that, you want to make sure that the perfect doesn't get in the way of the good, so that we balance things out appropriately, for one. The public benefits agreement is tied to density, from what I understood in the presentation, and those are very different documents, and the way the Design Review Commission has to deal with the design issues is going to be impacted by this. So I think that how that works is very important for us in our work session coming up. Also, the way the inclusionary housing and the other requirements that are also tied to it seems, I mean, just on the surface, I mean, and we'll get through it probably in more detail. How will that works together is super important, and it could get incredibly confusing. The extra 5%, what does that get you? Is it 10 years? Is it 99 years? How does IH work with the specific zoning issues? I think that's going to be something we need a lot of clarifications with. And you know, I'm a developer as in my day job, not working very hard these days. Because I'm not allowed to do. So definitely anything that can be done to make sure that this thing gets off the ground and it's not stillborn is super important. I think we need to learn the lesson from the Broadway corridor, in which I participated in the work groups and so forth, that unfortunately it's not going anywhere very fast. I mean, other than the demolition that's happening, there's really not a lot going on. And it has to do with all the layers of regulations and, you know, the layering of all the regulations. It just gets in the way of development. And if we're really going to make this happen, we need to make sure that it's doable. The private sector and the public sector, it is a public partnership. Public-private partnership to an extent, and I hear the cries of you're giving the developer a ton of money and upzoning is just going to increase the value of their property. On the flip side, they're taking risk and investing in this as the city is too. So it is a partnership, and it needs to be considered that way. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, commissioners, for those comments. I'm seeing Wade Lang give me indication of maybe one more, and then we will be wrapping up.
Yeah, for the record, Wade Lang. I wanted to thank staff for providing the materials for us and then clarifying those materials in your presentation. Very helpful. But I particularly wanted to thank the testimony that we heard tonight, because this is complex in a lot of ways. But the testimony was well thought out, and I think sincerely brought to us, which makes me look forward to our work sessions and a lot of work to do, because I didn't hear anybody in testimony absolutely disagree with this project, but there's nuances to it that we need to dig into and understand. So thank you for the testimony, and thank you, staff, for putting it all together for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Lang. So this item will go before the Design Commission on June 6th, and I don't have the time, but I can tell you for the Planning Commission, it is coming before us again on June 11th at 12:30.
The Design Commission session will be at 1:30.
On June 6th. Thank you very much. Any instructions from staff in terms of, typically we're given a deadline around, you know, clarifying questions or anything else we should anticipate regarding this item?
I think we can maybe follow up with the commissions to set some parameters around those clarifying questions and deadlines for issues. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if there are, between now and the next commission, as soon as possible, if there are additional questions that are coming up in the minds of commissioners, aside from what we discussed today, please do send them our way. That way we can prepare as much as possible for the work sessions. And I think that goes for both commissions. And I imagine the design commission's inputs will be funneled through the building, the BDS site staff. So yeah, that's generally what we ask. Yeah.
It would be Barry Manning for the record. I guess it would be helpful if both the commission and staff work together on themes that you've heard that you want to explore in the work session. So if you can convey ideas about that, that would be helpful, and we'll review the testimony as well and start to put some thought into that.
Great. Thank you again to everyone who came to testify, to staff for the great presentation, to our colleagues on the Design Commission for being here tonight, and all of my colleagues on the Planning Commission. With that, I will adjourn the meeting. Have a good night, everyone.
I'm surprised we were leaving so early. I thought this was going to go on. I was ready for the.
I know, I thought we were just going to flip right over the voting results. Oh my God. I thought of that stuff. I was like, oh, I should have mentioned my opening remarks. I thought about it too, but I was like, you could have done that as item of interest.
Turn on the radio.
I know. We got there. The results are going to be coming in. Oh, yeah. So
So nice to meet you. Thank you. Your staff did a fabulous job.
Every time they were like in group, I was like,
We labored and labored and labored. Trying to make it shorter.